Welcome back to the Small Business Toolbox, where we are gradually unravelling the nuts and bolts of self-employment in the UK. If you're not from the UK and you're watching this from elsewhere on the planet, feel free to watch on. A lot of it will apply no matter where you are, but I am probably going to be talking about a lot of stuff from a UK perspective. Today, we're covering off one of the most fundamental things in terms of running a business that you need to get right from square one, and that is, how much do you charge your customers? If you're running a service-based business, this is an absolutely essential and fundamental thing that you need to get right from square one. And hopefully in this video you will understand why going in too cheap is the worst thing you can possibly do. We're obviously mainly talking about service-based businesses here, so that is everything from window cleaners through to plumbers, electricians, joiners, private teachers, private tuition, music teachers, consultants, physiotherapists, anything where you're making money from your expertise in a certain subject. You're charging predominantly for your time. You're not selling a product. There might be an element of product sales, but the bulk of your money is coming from the sales of your services. That's what we're talking about here. If you run a product-based business where you're buying products and selling them at a profit, or you're making a product and selling it with some sort of markup on, you're trying to make money that way, that is a completely different thing and not something we're covering in this video. Let's head over to computer and I'll talk you through this spreadsheet. Okie doke. So this spreadsheet, it might look a little bit daunting at first. There's quite a lot of information on here. So we've got 4 tabs across the bottom here. But really the only bit that you need to think about, or you need to kind of keep a constant eye on, is the verdict section over here. This is going to be our key figure, the shortfall figure at the bottom, or hopefully we'll get to a surplus figure at the bottom. Now, I've filled in a couple of defaults. First of all, this is going to automatically calculate things based on UK tax rates at the minute, based on the 18-19 tax year, which is the current tax year that we're in when I'm filming this video. So if you want, you can come on to here and you can change the figures yourself. If you go onto my Patreon, I'm always going to be kind of putting the most up-to-date version onto my Patreon anyway, so you can get that off there at any time. The one I'm showing you here is version 2, which is kind of the first version that I've publicly released of this. I would suggest you just grab the latest one off my Patreon whenever you get a chance. You can kind of ignore these tax defaults. Just bearing in mind, we're only talking here about like lower rates of income. I'm not catering for any higher rates of tax. It's very, very simplistic, really. I'm only catering for 20% tax and 9% national insurance and bog standard class 2 NI contributions as well, which is, you know, for probably 99% of people who are self-employed, certainly in smaller businesses like your one-man band type businesses, this is probably all you're going to need to know about. If you're getting into your higher rates of tax, you're probably not worrying about this spreadsheet as much. So you can see here on the verdict tab, we've got this required net income figure. So that I've added on the required personal income page. We'll come back to this in a bit more detail later on. All I've done for the minute is I've added a figure in here, additional income net. So in other words, this is your take home annual wage after tax of £14,646. Where have I got that figure from? Well, that is what you would make working at McDonald's, earning £8 an hour for 40 hours a week, working full-time if you're over 25. No offence to anyone working at McDonald's, great customer service experience. The question is, can we get to that wage as a self-employed income by charging whatever hourly rate? So the hourly rate that I mentioned on the Gosforth Handyman video relatively recently compared to when this video came out, but the hourly rate that I mentioned then was £30 an hour. So let's just pop that figure into the spreadsheet and we're going to see what happens here. So we're going to start off just on best case scenario. How many hours a day do you want to work? Let's say maximum 8 hours a day, which is pretty normal in the UK. Now, you're probably not going to be able to charge customers for when you go off having your lunch and for when you're traveling around, whether you've got to go off and buy bits and pieces or whatever. Let's allow 1 hour a day for lunch and randomly having to drive around and do things. Then, how many days a week are you planning on working? Let's assume you're working a standard 5-day week. How many holidays do you want per year? In the UK, in corporate world, it's very common to get 20 days off at least plus bank holidays. Let's say a total of 25 days holiday per year. Quote days per week. Okay, so you're going to have to go out and win business. How many days per week are you planning on just going out and doing sales activities? So you can't do any other work because you're busy at customer sites quoting for jobs, putting quotes together and all that sort of thing. Let's say at the minute 1 day per week. You can always tweak that later on. Admin days per year. This has got to cater for all of your doing accounts, doing marketing, doing everything else to do with running a business. Now, bearing in mind that as your business grows, you're going to have someone doing that full time, just doing the admin duties. So for the best will in the world, I would say you're going to need at least 15 days a year of admin time to catch up on all the bits and pieces that are absolutely key to running your business. Okay, sick days per year. Let's hope you're not going to be ill because you're not going to make any money. Let's say 2 days off per year being ill. Predicted work rate. This is a really, really key figure here, and this is a difficult one to get right. What this is we're saying, okay, we're going to try and work 5 days a week. One of the days is going to be a quote day. We're going to have all these holidays and everything else. But there's no guarantee that you're going to get, in your remaining 4 days a week of chargeable days, there's no guarantee you're going to get work booked in for those days. Hopefully you will, but generally speaking, if you can work to 70 to 80% work rate, you're doing pretty well. Now, admittedly, that's going to leave you 30% of time that you can potentially do extra admin work, but the 15 days is already your absolute bare minimum anyway. So I would say let's go for 75% work rate. So 75% of the time, you're actually going to be doing chargeable work. Look at this. Here's our take-home wage in this little box up here. £21,538, which is pretty good. And it means that we're taking home over the McDonald's figure. But guess what? We haven't taken into account any running costs of the business yet. So let's pop some business running costs in. Vehicle. Are you going to need a vehicle for your business? Whether it's depreciation on a vehicle that you're going to buy, or you're going to have to hire a vehicle, but let's say £3,000 a year. And by depreciation, I mean, if you buy a vehicle for 15 grand and that vehicle is likely to last you for 5 years and be worth next to nothing at the end of that 5 years, then you might as well assume that your yearly depreciation on that vehicle is 3 grand. Total guess, but I think that's a fairly reasonable number. Tool purchase and depreciation. Again, it depends on the industry that you work in. As a joinery business, you could certainly assume that you're going to have easily 10 grand's worth of tools. Over 5 years of depreciation, you could say that's £2,000 per year. Insurances, you're going to have insurance for your business and insurance for your vehicle. And premises potentially as well. We'll ignore premises for the minute because I'm going to show you how premises is going to blow this out of the water. Let's say you can do all of your business insurance for £1,000 a year, which allows kind of £500 for your vehicle insurance, £500 for your business insurance. It may be more, it may be less. It's a stab in the dark. Accountant, £500 a year. Phone costs, you could easily spend £50 a month on the phone. Let's optimistically say £500 a year. Web and advertising costs, so you're going to have web hosting, or you're going to be paying a web development company to look after your website for you, or you're going to be paying for advertising on Facebook or on Google or in magazines or whatever. Let's allow £500 a year for that. Fuel for your vehicle, £200 a month. Let's say £2,400 a year. Power and utilities we're going to ignore for the minute because we're not going to cater for premises. There's our business running costs, £9,900 a year. Oh dear. At £30 an hour, we're now making £137 a year less than you would make if you were working at McDonald's, unfortunately. Our net take-home pay now is only £14,509. So, let's look at what would happen if you were a business charging £10 an hour. And let's really, really optimistically say that you can work. We're not going to go past 8 hours a day because you'll burn yourself out. Let's say that you can do half an hour for lunch. And let's say that you're going to do 20 days holiday a year. And let's say you're going to do half a day of quote time per week. And let's say we're going to take your admin days down to 10, sick days down to 1, and we'll put your work rate up to 80%, which is pretty optimistic. Let's get your business running costs completely out the equation for the minute. Let's assume you've got no other business running costs, which it's ridiculous to say that because of course you will. Look at this. So if you're charging £10 an hour and have no other business running costs whatsoever, and you've already set all of these other parameters to fairly optimistic parameters, you're going to bring home less than you would working at McDonald's. 11 grand a year net. What's the point in being self-employed? Just no point whatsoever. Let's up that to £20 an hour. Okay, we're now getting into the remit of a slightly better wage, bit more than McDonald's. We're still not catering for any business running costs whatsoever, though. So let's say you don't have a vehicle, you don't have tools, but you're going to have probably IT equipment and stuff like that. Your best will in the world, £1,000. Insurances, 500. Accountant, let's say getting it a bit cheaper, 300. Phone, I really don't see how you can get that much cheaper than 500. Web and advertising, 200. As I say, we're assuming you're not going to drive anywhere. So you're still going to have total expenses of 2.5 grand. We're only just getting past what you would make working at McDonald's, and we're still on these really optimistic parameters here. So when I say £30 per hour is really the bare minimum of what you should be charging as a self-employed person, this is why. Because when you think about what all these figures are actually going to be, let's get this back to you. An hour of travelling and having lunch, back to having a decent amount of holidays so that you don't burn out, normal quote days, normal admin days, couple of sick days, 75% work rate. And even with ultra low business running costs, we're still only bringing in 5 grand more than you would make working at Mucky D's. Now, there's another approach you can take to looking at this. Let's forget about how much you would make working at McDonald's. Let's think about how much you actually need to make. So let's go on to this required personal income. We'll blitz this McDonald's figure out of here. So let's just look at this is personal outgoings now. So we'll assume to start off with that you're live on your own, single person. Let's assume you're running some sort of joinery business, just because that's what we've already talked about in this video. And let's say, okay, food and shopping, £500 a month. Rent and mortgage, £800 a month. House insurance, 50. Car insurance, how old are you? 100 a month. Breakdown cover, let's say 50 a month. That's probably a bit much, 20. Car tax and maintenance, easily £50 a month. Maybe more. Fuel, I would personally allow for about 200 a month on fuel. Oh, well, this is personal fuel, so this isn't your business fuel. So let's say £50 a month on personal fuel. Your own personal phone bills, what, £20 a month? Gas and electric, there's a biggie. Could easily be 100 a month. Water, 50 a month. Probably a bit much, to say 30. TV licence in the UK is about £12 a month or thereabouts. Council tax, this is one of your biggest outgoings next to your mortgage. And shopping could easily be £180 a month. Look at our outgoings. £22,944 a year outgoings, based on the figures that we've got here. Okay, you can tweak your food bill and stuff like that. But, you know, in the scheme of things, your biggies are your mortgage. Okay, let's say 500 a month. Not a lot else here we can tweak down. 16 grand we're at. And what about other stuff? Luxuries. Spotify, Netflix, all that sort of thing. Let's allow 20 a month. You're probably going to want some sort of spending money so you can actually go out. Let's say 200 a month in spending money. Gifts for people per month. What are you going to spend? £50 a month? 600 a year on Christmas gifts and things? Let's say 30. Make you a bit of a cheapskate. Let's forget about holidays for the minute. You're not making enough to go on holiday. You're going to have loads of time off, but you're not going to have any money to pay for a holiday. So we're at a required net income, take home net income of 19,000. So I hate to say it, at the moment with the figures that we've got in here, and we were talking about a joinery business, you're going to have a vehicle. 3,000. Tool. We'll keep it at 1,000, but that's low. We'll assume you're not going to have premises. Insurances, 500 is very optimistic. Let's say 800. Accountancy, I would say 500 minimum. Phone, okay, we'll leave it at that. Fuel, you're going to have at least 2 grand a year on fuel, I would have said. And we'll leave the power and utilities because we've already kind of covered that over on the personal side. But if you had a workshop to run, you would have to cater for that in this section here. So we've got 8 grand of business running costs. Uh-oh, we are massively short at the moment. So what can you do? Well, you can up your predicted work rate. We can go to 100%. That means that every day that's a chargeable day in a year, you're going to be doing work. That is unrealistic, but, you know, you'll just have to trust me on the fact that if you're running a services-based business, you're not going to be running at 100%. Let's say 80. We need a higher hourly rate. Let's try £40 an hour. We're a bit over, but okay, we're 3 grand a year over. That might pay for a holiday. Let's say 35. Okay. £35 an hour will just about give you enough to make an extra £450 a year. Sadly, not quite enough to go on holiday. Let's say you do actually want to go on holiday. £70 a month you could put aside for a holiday. Would £840 get you a trip away somewhere? Yeah, it probably would. We're short again here. Let's say £40 an hour. 37, 36. Okay. So based on these figures here that we've put in, work rate of 80%, you're going to have to be charging £36 an hour just to survive and pay for one holiday a year that costs you no more than £840. As I say, this was all based on a joinery business. Okay, let's up the ante a bit. Let's say that you want to have a workshop. Around where I am, I can get a workshop for about £600 a month. So that's going to be £7,200 a year. Oh dear, my column's not big enough. You're going to have all sorts of other costs. Power and utilities, let's say £1,000 a year, which is pretty optimistic. Insurances are going to go up because you're going to have to pay for insurance for your premises. Vehicle, tools, if you've got a workshop, that'll definitely go up. Let's say £2,000. What else have we got? We'll assume accountants, phone, web. You're probably going to want to spend a bit more on advertising to make sure that you can make enough money. So there's your business running costs now. Uh-oh. Right, we're short again. Well short. £40 an hour. £50 an hour. £47 an hour will just about make you enough money to live and keep a workshop running and leave you £290 a year leftover money to maybe pop into savings or something like that. It's not a lot. On the plus side, let's assume that you have a partner. Share your bills a bit. So let's assume the partner's net income is going to be 15 grand a year for whatever reason. You're probably going to have to up your food shopping. I hate to say it, they're going to have to eat something. Rent and mortgage. You can put all your own figures into this and have a play. You'll probably spend a bit more on gifts, birthdays, Christmas, all that. Let's up that a little bit. Holidays, that's going to cost you more. Okay, so on the plus side, because you're now sharing your financial burden with your partner, you only need to make 10 grand a year now to survive. So we'll keep all these running costs the same. So you could potentially drop your hourly rate. Let's see, if we drop to 30, that's too much. 35, £32 an hour, 31, 32. 31's too low. 32. Again, it's going to depend on all these parameters that you've got up here in terms of how many days a week you're going to be actually working and your predicted work rate. One thing you can do is, after you've been self-employed for a couple of years, is work out how many chargeable days you did in a year, and how burnt out you're feeling at the end of it. Do you need to up your holiday days? Do you need to lower your predicted work rate? Okay, you can lower your holiday days, but you're probably also going to have to lower your predicted work rate as well, so it's probably not going to help that much. Say 75%, we're still short. Hopefully, it's sinking in why, if you're charging £10 an hour or £20 an hour, why it's just not going to work. Unless you're running a business that has very, very few overheads. Okay, let's think of a business that does have really low overheads. Off the top of my head, a decorating business. Okay, you don't need to have a workshop. You're still going to have a vehicle. Your tools are going to be much lower. Let's say 300 a year on tools. Insurances, hopefully that'll be a lot lower, 600. You'll hopefully have no premises. Let's say 300 on accountancy fees, 500 on phone. Let's take the web down to 300. You're still going to have fuel. You're not going to have any of that. So you're still going to have 7 grand a year of business running costs. So even if your business running costs are pretty low, you're still going to have to be making a good £20 an hour just to survive. Okay, maybe you're not going to have quote days. Let's change your quote days to half a day of going out quoting. But Admin days, let's take that down to 10. Sick days down to 1. And predicted work rate up to 80%. So at £20 an hour, and assuming you're living with a partner and sharing the burden of all your bills, and they're bringing in a bit more than you, then you could probably survive. It's not great, and you're not bringing in as much as you would working at McDonald's, but you are bringing in enough to survive. Let's take that out. If you're living on your own, take that out. 25 grand a year based on the figures that we've got here. But obviously you would tweak those to suit yourself. Massively short. £30. We're back into your £40 an hour. 35. 32 is short. 33. 34 is 34. 35 is the minimum. So if you're a decorator living on your own with really low business outgoings, £35 an hour. I have allowed here as well for cost of goods sold and the revenue you've got from selling the cost of goods. So say, for example, you buy paint at £2,000 a year, but you charge a margin on top of that or a markup on the paint. So let's say you charge the customer double for the paint. So, that's another way that you can bring money in to the business, obviously, is not just through the service revenue. So we've made an extra £2,000 a year now by charging the customer for the paint, which means our hourly rate could potentially come down a bit. Oh, too far. 33. £33 an hour is now your minimum. This is a bit that people seem to forget about. If you can get a business running with outgoings of under £5,000 a year, you're doing pretty well. And most of the time, a business that you're going to be building up, it'll have outgoings substantially higher, especially once you start taking into account staff, office space, all your insurances, outgoings, not to mention things like pensions. And pensions, we've not even touched on pensions, by the way. At the moment, we're not catering for putting any money aside for a pension or savings. So that would kind of come from the pot of excess income, So your surplus here has to cover you to pay for what you're going to do when you retire. There's a lot to take into account here. I don't want this to put you off, but at the same time, you need to be realistic. And this is kind of why you can see we always get around this £30 figure, and then anything, well, as soon as you get below it, things start to go horribly wrong. That £30 an hour as well, that comes up in a lot of different places. A lot of garages and mechanics charge £30 or £40 an hour. The minimum recommended rate for private teaching and private tuition for music teachers is around £30 an hour, a bit more than that now, I think about £35 an hour. So when I used to teach drums, I used to charge £30 an hour for my lessons, and that was the minimum recommended teaching rate for private tuition. I would regularly see people going out and charging £10 an hour for lessons. Well, there you go. There's your answer to that. It's certainly not enough to build a business on, and it's certainly not enough to live on. And if you work on a day rate, just multiply it up. That's fine. We're talking hourly rate here because it's probably the easier thing to apply across a lot of different industries. Hopefully, this has illustrated with brutal honesty why you need to be charging bare minimum £30 an hour. 40, 50, 60, that's more into your realms of a wage that'll actually bring home a decent net income. We'll take all of these figures again to more realistic numbers. Insurances, I still think £1,000 a year is very reasonable for that. 500 a year on accounts, 500 a year on advertising and web if you want your business to grow in any way whatsoever. Let's tweak this to £50 an hour. £50 an hour. A lot of you will be saying, oh my God, I'll never be able to charge £50 an hour. We're just getting past the average wage now. 45, 40, let's see. So remember, at the moment, the average wage in the UK is about 30 grand a year. So to get to that with the figures we've put in at the minute, £44 an hour. And if any of your customers come along and tell you that you should be charging £10 or £20 an hour because they don't understand this, because they haven't looked into the running costs of a business and what you end up actually taking home, point them in the direction of this video. Hopefully that'll explain to them why you cannot run a business charging £10 an hour. You will be making significantly less than you would make working at, let's just pop that McDonald's wage in here, 14,646, take home wage, £10 an hour. Your business running costs are using up every penny that you've made. You're not making enough money to live on. You're not making enough money to run a business. And we are short until we get past the £30 an hour mark. So there you go. Please don't let this put you off setting up in business. Now is a fantastic time to set up in business, but make sure you charge enough that you're actually going to make some money. That's the whole point of setting up in business. If all you want to do is go out there and top up your existing income with the odd bit of backhander, cash in hand, tax-free jobs, this isn't the channel for you to watch. There is no need whatsoever for you to be going out there and charging so little for the small amount of time that you've got on this planet. And if a customer wants to undervalue your time, they need to go away, move on. There are plenty customers out there who will value your time very highly. We're at a time at the moment where a lot of different skills are in really high demand. There's skills shortages across the board in all sorts of different areas. When we talk about things like market rates and market demands, that is the time that you put your rates up. Not when there's no demand. You put your rate up when demand is high, and demand is high at the moment in a lot of different areas. And if you don't respond to that, the situation will never improve. Remember, you can download the spreadsheet that I've been showing you here off my Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com/smallbusinesstoolbox, for $1, you can download it from there. And if you keep on as a Patreon, whenever I release updates, you'll automatically be able to download updates to this spreadsheet and other freebies that I give out on Patreon as well. And if you already support me on the Gosforth Handyman Patreon, you don't need to also support me on this channel. I will put everything that I'm giving away on the Small Business Toolbox Patreon will also go onto the Gosforth Handyman Patreon as well, so you don't need to support me twice. And if you don't want to do that, it's relatively easy to knock up your own spreadsheet to work this out for yourself, but any support you do give will help me make more videos on this channel. This has been a really big topic to cover off, and not something that's easy to cover completely in a 30 to 40 minute video. If you've got any questions or concerns about hourly rates, pop them in the comments below and I might do a follow-up video. Also, what I might do on the Patreon is release a spreadsheet every now and then with it pre-populated for a particular type of business, just with some estimated figures for different types of businesses and what the sustainable hourly rate might be for that particular job. Thank you once again for watching. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit subscribe. I shall see you next time.